I'm Michael Weatherly.
Hi, I'm Cote Pablo.
And this is
Off Duty.
Welcome to Off Duty, an NCIS Rewatch podcast. Today on the show, it's the season finale of Season 3, Episode 24, Hiatus, Part 2. Gibbs regains consciousness, but he's lost all memory since 1991. Then he starts to remember a few things. Jen, an old buddy, and then he remembers Siva. Today's episode, Season 3, Episode 24, Hiatus, Part 2. This is it. This is the season finale of Season 3. The bookend, it started with Killary Part 1, Part 2. It ends with Hiatus Part 1, Part 2. I think it's, if not the best season, it's top 3.
I really like the season very much. It was very special to me for obvious reasons. It was my first season, and I had so much fun.
It's the season finale. It's the season finale of Off Duty as well.
Oh my gosh, yes it is. So at this time of this episode's release, May 16th, 2006, Finnish monster rock band Lordi won the Eurovision Song Contest with the song Hard Rock Hallelujah, the first heavy metal song to ever win Eurovision. Do you know anything about Eurovision, Shelley?
I do know about Eurovision.
You do?
I do, yes, because my wife is from Eastern Europe.
Oh, okay. I didn't know much about this. Heavy metal song to win. Oh, wow.
Yep.
New Super Mario Brothers was released in North America for the Nintendo DS, eventually becoming one of the top 25 best-selling video games of all time. Did you ever play that game? Did you ever play the Mario Brothers Nintendo thing?
No.
You never did?
I was trying to get work as an actor.
Got it.
I stopped playing video games in like 1983.
Lucky you. Some people always just get stuck. I think I did the Mario Brothers thing for a little bit, and I think I played, if I'm not mistaken, on set Tetris for just a little.
Oh, Tetris, yes.
Remember
so that
Tetris?
Was like a Game Boy kind of thing.
And also, I think when it came out, and I was very, very young, like the beginning of the beginning, Pac-Man.
Sure, don't give away your age.
Oh,
a tattooed mummy of a woman in her late 20s of the Mochi tribe from 1,500 years ago was found in Peru. A tattooed mummy.
Well, I mean, tattoos have been around for, my gosh, forever.
I don't have any tattoos.
Not one?
Not a one.
Is it because you were just raised very conservative, or what's the deal?
I got a couple reasons. I'll give you reason number one. I don't like needles. I don't like needles at all. I could never have been a heroin addict, and if I was, I would have been smoking it or snorting it, because I was not going to be putting it into a vein. I do not like needles. So that almost stops me right there. Number two, weirdly, I am a little bit of a germaphobe about things. So like blood and ink, and that's not really I'm into that either. And then, and I'm working up to it. I also really like to change like my weight or my hair or I like to change who I am and how I look. I get stronger, or I get skinnier, or I get chubby and fat. And I like to play with all of those things in an impermanent way. And the idea of some permanent stamp on me flies in the face of things. And then lastly, I don't want to have to be in hair and makeup for 1 second longer than it takes.
Yes, but you didn't know this. Well, I didn't know that, for example.
I became an actor when I was 20, 21.
No, I get it. But for example, like the idea of tattoos wasn't really around until I was a little older. And by then I didn't know the whole makeup and hair thing. But I will say this. I do agree with you. And I remember going back to this a couple of times, because I remember having this conversation with friends, and they were like, well, how come you don't have a tattoo and all that? And I just said, I guess like the idea of committing to something forever and ever and ever, and not being able to change it, not being able to modify it, and not being able to do something, it's just maybe too much. And like what I like today, knowing what I have gone through and the things that I have liked, like, would I still like something that I like? Would I still wear the same shirt?
Johnny Depp had Winona Forever tattooed on his shoulder. and now it's wino.
So let's get into today's episode and what an episode it is.
Let's get into this episode. Now, can you sum it up for me? Today's episode, season 3 finale, Hiatus Part 2?
No, but I think you can.
Pin Pula, baby.
It's life or death, right?
Don't get upset, Jethro. You won't remember.
Give me a name.
Pin Pula.
Gibbs wakes from his coma, but has amnesia. There's a story twist. The search for Pin Pula continues, the most powerful adversary in NCIS history until, the next more powerful adversary. You know what? I don't think that Pin Pula is the most powerful adversary. I think that it was your brother who killed Caitlin Todd.
No, I think that could be argued by a lot of people. I think there's been a lot of
I don't believe he's the most powerful adversary. I take issue with that. Mike Franks enters the scene. God, that guy, Muse Watson, so fantastic.
God, he's so good. He's so good. He makes me so happy every single time he comes on.
Now, there's a very dramatic plot twist at the end of this episode, but we're not going to give it away.
No, we won't.
Because we're going to start with what this episode really is. And it, first of all, is written by Don Belisario, directed by Dennis Smith.
Mm-hmm.
And Cody, what are the hallmarks of like a Belisario-Smith collaboration? What do you think those things kind of line up to be? I think you can find oneers because Dennis likes oneers.
He likes oneers. I was going to say there's a little bit of rain sometimes in the episodes.
Don likes rain.
And Don likes rain.
It's moody.
They're usually very good character episodes. They give a lot of insight on the character. There's a lot of insight into Gibbs, as he's going through this, loss of memory thing. He reverts to 15 years prior, right? And so he's reliving something that was an epic, tragic loss in his life. And there's a really, hard scene to watch.
Oh, I want my family. I want Shannon. Oh, I want Kelly.
When we shot this, it's been a while. I just kind of went oh my God, the insight into what the character is going through is a lot. Also, I love when he starts, when Jenny Shepard is there and there's that thing where he sees his wife and all of a sudden it's Jenny sort of lingering and he gets this flash memory of them making love. And then she goes really close to him and she goes, what do you think? Where did you remember us making love or something like that? And I was like, oh, forward. It's really good.
Yeah.
It's a really good moment.
Like the ending, everything's about to change. Because remember when we come back, the opening scene of season 4 is a coffee cup coming off the elevator as the doors open. And we think it's Gibbs because it's the jacket and the coffee cup and the thing. And then when it goes wide, it's me holding the coffee cup and I go sit at Gibbs' desk. And Donoso has just, been given the mantle because Gibbs is on a hiatus. But it all starts here with this episode and his, we talked about this a lot. Season 3 is about this sort of moral ambiguity and about a lot of fractured time narratives, a lot of flashbacks, a lot of dealing with the death of Kate, dealing with an introduction of new characters, you and the new director Shepard. Lots of transition. And I think it's so fascinating that it culminates in Gibbs and Pin Pula blowing him up, but in Gibbs really feeling like, that's it, I'm done.
Well, it's funny, watching it this time around, I had this moment when I thought, oh, I know why he's quitting. Because in a way, he's revisiting something that maybe he's never dealt with.
That's right.
He's there in that bed and he's going back to this horrible, horrible, traumatizing emotional time. And then I think what happens to him is that I think he has a moment where he's like, I miss them terribly and I can't do anything about it.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe it's at that moment that he goes, I need to go lick my wounds.
This episode is what, like you were saying, it brings everything up, all of that buried, repressed, unprocessed stuff.
But by the way, it's not just happening to Gibbs. When you start paying attention, there's a lot of other characters that are dealing with the same thing. They're dealing with loss and they're dealing with, getting in touch with that and doing the proper thing, which is to mourn.
Interesting. And I think that's what you were saying about Don Belisario writing character. He always mirrors the sort of central theme in all of the different story strands.
Yeah.
Everything points back to the main thrust of the story. It is fascinating.
I like it, and I love the ending, and I love that he tells Ziva, I owe you one, and she says, I'll collect. Because it's just such a great line.
Yep.
I'll collect.
What do you think about Donoso's rule number 3?
Rule number 3, never underestimate your opponent.
No, actually, rule number 3.
Dinozo's.
Rule numero 3, probe.
Gotcha.
Never underestimate your opponent. I think he's right on.
Yeah.
I think it's a really good one.
Mike Franks. I remember walking with Muse Watson during this episode down the alleyway.
Yeah.
With Harmon and Muse. And I just remember thinking, this show, because the show was coming on, but it wasn't like a giant hit show yet. It was, we were doing better in season 3, and the ratings had been improving and everything. We were having
season
a lot of
4,
fun.
we hit number 1, right?
Season 4. That was the first time, yeah.
Yeah, season 4 around December.
But I just remember walking and I was like, Muse Watson is the real deal.
Hello, Proby.
My brother and I married the same woman twice.
That mustache is not put on in the hair and makeup department.
No, and by the way, the coolest guy, such a terrific actor. He loved this character, and he brought he brought so much, his wardrobe, but he brought so much to the show. Like the character of Mike Franks brought so much richness, so much depth, and it actually
real.
so real. But it made us view from a fan standpoint, made us view Gibbs as a probie, as a and so it gave us insight into that character, which is like the young version of him, like the youthful, like the before I became boss kind of thing. And Mark does something that is so good in that scene where he's eating the steak. There's this real, and he does it beautifully, and it's very subtle. There's this real sort of wide-eyed, like, I'm excited about this boss, moment.
Retired. Damn, this is good. I owe you. Had to be a hijacking, huh?
And it's just a beautiful thing that he does. And now with time and experience, man, I go like, there were some times that I'd be like, oh, what is Mark doing? But he's so good at being very subtle. He plays around with the dynamic of being boss and then being student. And it's so cool to watch. There's a definite change in demeanor. There's a definite change in energy. And he does it in a very subtle way. Let's talk about our next guest. It's Gary Cole, a man that, by the way, you and I have not actually truly had a conversation with.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, I shook his hand on the set.
But that's not the same thing.
But he is the number one. He is the number one.
He is the new number one on NCIS.
The leader of NCIS. And I didn't think anyone could take Mark Harmon's place. The Gibbs seemed irreplaceable to me. But you know what? It takes extraordinary talent. It takes a silver fox.
It takes a silver fox.
So should we roll out the red carpet and hit the drum roll for our guest?
Mr. Gary Cole.
Name's Alden Parker, as in Agent Alden Parker, Federal Bureau of Investigation.
You run an Omni 4-armor?
Omni 5, game changer, potato.
Get your head out of the sand, okay? You screwed up.
Don't mean to step on any toes. Listen, Paul, can I call you Paul? Don't answer, I'm gonna do it anyway. Seems you have a history of coloring outside the lines. Zombie it is. The only question I have is, do you guys ever go to the bathroom? You wanna die by lethal injection or spend the rest of your life rotting in a jail cell that smells like soup? Oh, that's creepy.
Are you sitting by any chance in a room with a lot of art that you painted, or are you just like an art aficionado?
No, I like to make it seem that way, but it's all my wife's art. This is her studio/office, so this is her domain.
Oh, I love it.
It looks impressive that I possibly did it, but I can barely do stick figures, so no, it's not.
So when did you guys wrap? You wrapped some time ago, probably in April, right?
Yeah, first week of April, April 4th, something like that. Yeah.
Here's my question. You've done so much like television work and film work and everything, but television is, and of course Steppenwolf and theater and all the like extraordinary history, but television is this strange octopus that gets its tentacles into your life in a way that can be slightly uncomfortable for most normal people. So when you finish an like, what was it, 22 episodes this year or 24?
No, well, this year was, because of the strike, was very short.
Oh, that's right. You guys.
So
had a short season,
so it was
right.
10 this year. Yeah.
Oh, that's not.
But
quite
the previous
as brutal.
No, but the previous years was, it was 22. Both of them were 20.
So do you have a kind of decompression plan? You know, like when they bring people back from the International Space Station and their bone density has been reduced, so they have to actually put them in like a hyperbaric chamber for a while. Do you have some kind of simulated environment you retreat to?
No, I don't know. I mean, I early in my career, I did a show called Midnight Caller, which was on NBC. This was like, it started in the late 80s, maybe 88, 89. And I did it for 3 years. And I got a pretty good baptism, because it was one of those shows where I was basically in everything. I mean, I had some time, but I rarely had a day off or anything like that. So the environment I was, kind of used to, although after that series, I never had anything resembling that schedule until now, until I went back to NCIS. And even then, it's, the way it's kind of formatted, it's, you'll get a day or two here and there. So I don't know. And because of the efficiency of where the show is right now, and how long it's been on the air, there are the days where, you look up and it's 3:00 and lo and behold, we're done. I mean, that's unheard of in a lot of places.
Wait 1 second. Can you say that again?
Well, I'm sure it wasn't the case 10 years ago. No.
Which is why we're going, wait 1 second.
I know.
Back it up.
Can I tell you a David McCallum story about this? And I don't know if you really got to, I'm sure you got to hang out with him on the crime scenes and the autopsy. David could shaggy dog a story, or he could come to the point. And he was, I'm a Steve McQueen nerd and everything. And of course, David and Robert Wagner both, knew McQueen really well. But when David was doing The Man from U.N.C.L.E. at MGM, which is now Sony over in Culver City,
right?
He said he and Vaughn they wanted to get done because they wanted to live their lives, but they had the shooting schedule, and the executives on the lot would they would come and sniff around, and they wanted. So what David said, he and Vaughn would they would put a PA outside the door, and they would because they would wrap it they'd get there at 8 a.m. and they were wrapped by 11:30 a.m. It would just be like, they would shoot everything in one direction, and everyone was smart with their blocking and turned to the camera, and then they just popped in tighter, and they would ramble off 8 pages or 10 pages, and then they were done. Because everyone was a pro and everyone knew what they were doing, and they wanted to go live a life and go to Malibu, and it was the 60s, for God's sakes. So they put a guy outside the studio stage door, and they just turned the red light on. So if anyone was trying to come on the stage, they'd be like, sorry, it is
can't get in.
set.
Sorry.
Can't get in.
No.
And there was that totally empty stage, which I love so much.
That's brilliant. That's brilliant. That's amazing if that's true. I mean, that's, to
It's
saw
a different
through.
time.
Yeah. And also, sure. You could probably do that then, where you could lock off one way for an hour and then turn it around, and then, nobody would be the wiser. So,
David loved blocking like nobody. He would come in and be like, now, Gary, you will stand here.
Right.
You're like, okay.
Well, there's numerous times when David comes in, with the script. I will say this. I will not say this.
Yes. We've all gone through it, and we loved him for it.
Right. And I would
at that point,
personally
you
say
weren't
this.
you were not gonna argue with that guy.
No.
You're like, he's earned it.
Yeah.
Did you ever hear the story about the Band-Aid? David, in season 1, there was an explosion at a crime scene. We were all outside of this house and the house blew up. And David, on the day when all the splinters flew and he saw what Larry Fuentes did with the explosion, he was like, he went over to makeup and he put a little blood on his forehead. So for the reaction shot when he lifted his head, and so the audience, elicit audience sympathy. It's 101 TV star in the manual they give you. It's sad.
I've been damaged. Yes.
Yes. And so down in Autopsy, to keep continuity, he put a Band-Aid on his head, and Harmon hated this so much. Harmon was just apoplectic about the whole scene sealing of it and the whole eliciting whatever it was. Harmon, it got under his skin. Not hard to do. Sort of an expert. But Harmon.
Did you know that? Did you know that, by the way, Gary? Said he was an expert?
Well, I've heard,
There's stories. There's stories.
You've heard Weatherly stories, I bet.
Through Sean. Sean, to me, is my show historian.
Oh, Sean has very slowly let them...
Sean is my show historian in a very, very diplomatic way, but he lets me know.
The way that Mark would deal sometimes with a little bit of irritation is he would get a little prankster that would come out in him. So he handed out Band-Aids to all of us. and we all put Band-Aids on our heads, and we all walked into Autopsy wearing Band-Aids on our heads, and we shot the scene or rehearsed it or whatever, but it was the first take, and Billy Webb had the Steadicam on, and everyone on the crew was laughing. David McCallum did not blink.
Did you all strategically put it in the exact same place that David had it?
Yeah. And he did. David he's locked in. And he's like, it's somewhat inappropriate that all of you are wearing the thing I do.
Right.
But, stealing my... and then we all took it off and had a laugh.
Gary, how long have you been doing the show?
I came in, we're now going into season 22. I came in at the beginning of season 19.
Oh, my gosh.
So this would be, because of the strike, it was a little short, but 4 years, basically. This would be
4
the
years.
fourth season.
And how did you find out that you were going to be... was it just like a phone call? We often talk about, hey, how was it when you got the part, kind of a thing? Did you know anything about the show? Did you have to do any research on the show? Had you ever seen the show?
I had seen the show, a couple of decades before. I didn't really watch the show.
Us.
Well, a while ago.
Decades ago.
Well, yeah, wasn't Bill Clinton president when this show went on the air? Not quite.
Cody was in diapers.
Yeah, right.
Well, that's
no. I found out about it very late. Apparently, it's weird because they didn't. Mark, I guess, wanted to leave, and when that was discussed or came up, and I don't know when it actually came up because it came up somewhere between season 18 and 19. They weren't sure what they were going to do. There was talk that they would just end it. From what I heard is that he, I don't know why he would be surprised by that because it could have been a possibility. But then he agreed to begin the 19th year and do 4 shows while they brought in this other character and I think the way they did it was smart because rather than him leaving and then one day, there's a knock on the door and, hi, I'm the new guy. We did shows together involved in the same case. He worked for the FBI and they were working in tandem and they had conflict and all blah, blah, blah.
And you were one of the few people that got to go to Alaska, right?
Yes. Yeah, that was fantastic.
Which was an amazing experience. I remember talking to Mark about that, and
it was really something.
Michael, I'm sure knows this, but I've always been terrified of bears. I don't know why, but I've always been terrified of bears, and I guess he had like a very close encounter with a bear. Mark, not while you guys were shooting.
You mean what? Because he had been there previously, right?
Yeah,
right.
yeah. And and I remember him telling me this, and I was like, "Oh my God!" Like I just freaked out. But he was just telling how beautiful it was, and I just remember a couple of scenes, especially one in that particular episode, which was I think Gibbs's last episode of McGee and Gibbs, and it was a really beautiful scene.
I love you, man.
I love you too.
That was gorgeous. It was set up
It
really
was just
nicely.
such
They
a
had them in there.
beautiful
Yeah,
scene.
they had, the hip waders, and they were, and there's a great shot as once they have their final scene, they just leave Mark in the water, and then you see the seaplane going behind him. They got
and it
very
was a
lucky.
small crew, right? Very small crew.
Yeah, I mean, it was not everybody went. We had, probably half of the people that really worked on the show, maybe more than that. But it was a skeleton crew compared to what we have back here. But they were also real lucky because they told us we stayed in a big fishing lodge that normally closes down on Labor Day for the winter. They seal it up and everybody goes away. But they kept it open for an extra 10 days. We only shot, I think it was 3 days. But we had to get there. They had to scout quickly, shoot, and then wrap up and leave. But they were lucky because they normally said at that time of year, it's basically just kind of foggy and damp and all of this beautiful landscape. You don't really see it. You might get, it might burn off for like an hour. But those 3 days were like crystal clear, sunshine.
The film gods were on your side.
Yeah,
totally.
They really lucked out because they were able to really use
godly
everything.
send-off.
Yeah, it was It was a really good, a good TV exit. It was well done.
I wanted to ask you because I can go in my Wayback Machine to doing an episode with Sean Murray. I think Mark may have been having a shoulder surgery or something. He couldn't really work for a period of time. And so they had Sean and I doing sort of pulling the sled, the what would have been the Gibbs sled, that captain's seat. And we were kind of co-running. I think there was some auction house that I remember, and we had to arrest people in the parking lot. And when they cut the episode together, Mark Horowitz and Shills and everybody, and I can't remember if it was Shane or I think it was after Don left, though, they said it doesn't work without Mark because the way that cast, I mean, it's like the Brady Bunch, right? You got to have, like, every character serves a kind of archetypal purpose.
Right.
And without that lead dog, it kind of got a little like wiggly waggly. And by the time you got to the fourth act, it sort of didn't have that vertebrae, that spine to bring you through the story. So they actually reshot scenes and brought Mark back in when he was healed. And that really stood out to me when I thought, wow, doing this show without Harmon looks like it might be impossible. It's so interesting to me when I see you in the chair and sweep into the room, and the way that you have chosen to command that room is very backseat, it feels to me.
Happy to hook you up with a guy there I know. He can probably give you some more intel on your petty officer.
It'd be faster if you made the call.
I'd love to, but I'm already going to miss half the warm-up act. So,
like, the authority is strong, but it's quiet. And Mark was a functional mute, Gibbs. So he was not, he didn't talk a lot, but everyone was afraid of him. He ruled sort of by fear. I love how your character began, and I wanted to ask you about the boy who played the guy who played your son, your younger version of yourself. You had a brush with crime,
right?
Your character,
right?
Parker, and it seems to me like Gibbs was never a criminal. He was engaged in revenge and a sort of Charles Bronson, Clint Eastwood, revenge fantasy thing.
Yeah.
But that's not where your character comes from, a kind of grayer area. And I wondered if that was when you were prepping to create him, or if you knew any of this stuff, or what that was.
Or did you sit down with the writers and they pitch things to you?
No, I mean, I really let things just kind of unfold in front of me. They told me the idea of how they wanted to introduce him working side by side with the team, including Mark, working on this case that they all had in common. And then after that, I just kind of reacted to what they started to give me, which was, and they were conscious. They didn't want the same dynamic at all because they didn't really want to try to force something to be the same as it was with another character. And I think the observations you just made is that's the same thing I made. Horowitz said something which made sense, I guess, in a broad way, which is that if Mark was the stern father that everybody was afraid of and or trying to please, this guy was the crazy uncle, or just the the whoever that, even though he's got the title of leader of the team, he's only using the authority when it's necessary, or just for coordination. Otherwise, he's just another guy in the room, trying to relate to, everybody that's around him. And that's how I went at it. And it's like, and you guys, you lived it and for years and made the show into what it is because of just the interactions of the characters. The case is the case. The case is always going to be there. Mm-hmm. But the reason I think people watch it is because of the intimacy or the dynamics in between characters, however they evolve, and they've got this this task that they're trying to accomplish in the background. And that's how I really look at it. And I try to go literally scene by scene, show by show. We do a scene. Does this scene work? Get it right and move on to the next one. And, it's up to the higher gods up in the upstairs third floor to put it all together and make it work. But I think that's right.
Are you having fun after 4 years?
The thing I always liked about being in this environment as an actor is when you're an ongoing character that literally is going by in years. I'm four. We're all a year older every time we go back for the season. There's weight to that. There's and I always felt I had to invent less as an actor and you just start to behave because you don't really think of what you need to do. It just, if it's written as it should be, if it's tight and it's clear, you will just behave as the character. There's times you gotta make certain scenes work, and there might be a blip in there writing wise that's fixable, and that's what we try to do. That's one thing I learned doing Veep. I saw Julia Dreyfus constantly, and not if it wasn't necessary, but if just one moment wasn't, something was missing, something was misfiring in a scene that was actually doing well, but it just kind of, after a minute or so, it hits a wall, and then you stop and fix it somehow.
I love that you're saying this because we've talked about this a lot with Michael and certainly other actors that have gone through NCIS and either worked with us or then subsequently worked later, is the idea that you always go back to the dialogue, you always go back to the storyline, and you always go back to things that, if they need to be fixed, you fix. You don't glaze over them. You don't just go out, right, whatever. They can fix it on editing. You know what I mean?
I can remember being on a crime scene set. And it was I was the only agent on the scene. There were a lot of ND sort of background actor agents, but I was alone, and I was on the phone back to Autopsy or Abby's Lab or whatever it was, and I was relating what I was seeing, but there was no intercut with it was just a voice, so I had to carry the whole thing, and I couldn't lean on that, so I had to get it all Right. And I didn't understand the scene. It had something to do with like, well, if he was left-handed, he could never have done the blah, 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 or whatever the thing. And I didn't understand my point of view. And it felt like I was just jabbering information, and that my character was not present. That like, why not just have one of these ND agents say this and give him a day rate, because I have no reason to be here. Do that. And so I went over to the writer who was on set, and I can't remember who I tortured, but I said, "Can you run this with me?" So we ran it, and then I said, "What does that mean? When I say that?" And then they were like, "Oh, well, da, 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 da." And I was like, "Let's do it again." So then we ran it again. I'm like, "Let's go again, right away, twice as fast." And then we ran it again. And as I ran it with the writer, he heard the mistake. And then he went, "Oh, because you wouldn't know." Okay, now I know what it is. And then he switched up the lines. But I have to say, I didn't know the mistake. I couldn't spot it. It took a kind of writer brain to figure it out.
Yeah.
You just knew it just wasn't rolling off your tongue.
But you felt it. You knew that the scene wasn't getting through. It wasn't.
And then all of a sudden it had a point of view, and all of a sudden it locked in, and it was really fun, and it sailed. And to me, that was one of the great joys. And so I was curious for you, is a role like Veep, or a job like Veep, not a role, but like set environment?
No, I mean, Veep was extraordinary, and one of the different things about Veep was I had never been on a television show and I don't even remember how the schedule went. I mean, it was a half-hour show, it was a single camera show, so we kind of had a sitcom schedule, like we do 3, take a week off. But then there were times when there were just rehearsals for like a solid 4 or 5 days before a camera before you'd even see a camera.
Wow.
And, and just like, here's the draft. Everybody reads the first draft. And then what are we going to do now? Well, we're going to throw that in the corner, and everybody's going to get up. This is after we just read it. Nobody has memorized anything or anything like that. And now we're just going to do the scene that we just read, but without benefit of this script, and just everyone's just going to throw their dialogue in the internet. And versions of that, and they'd come back and look at that, and then take lines that came up in the rehearsal and do that. So that was a show that was constantly kind of being written while we were shooting it. There was always 3 writers at the monitor.
Was there a lot of corpsing and a lot of like people just not being able to keep their shit together, or was everyone? Because I can only imagine that got especially with ad-libbing, or at least a structured ad-libbing. I mean, you were the vice president on West Wing, and then Veep, so you know a lot about vice presidencies, right? And that's sort of your.
I'm an expert.
That's his wheelhouse. That's the wheelhouse.
What was your point? This is, Cody knows, this is like one of my favorite things, is point of entry. Cody came from, a background where you studied stage, and you studied the text, and you studied and I did a Snickers commercial. So I clearly have a lot of training, but everyone's point of entry is so interesting to me. And when I saw 1985 man running away from police to live in LA, but what was curious to me is I was thinking, so you're in Chicago, you're up to your ears in a prestigious, esteemed theatrical world, right? And you're was there a moment of, I'm going to give this a try, or somebody solicited and said, Gary, come to LA, or come to, an audition, or like, how did camera work?
That's a really good question. Point of entry, or the break.
Yeah, I had a very, well, I don't know. There's nothing, nobody has a traditional or non-traditional. I mean, it's just to go into businesses, whatever.
Everyone lands on the moon totally differently.
But I didn't, like the first time I went to New York, it wasn't like, all right, I'm going to New York. I went to New York in a play that had been sent there from Chicago. So
which one?
True West.
Oh, yes.
Sam Shepard plays. So the first time I ever went to New York, I got off the plane and went to rehearsal. So that was that's a big difference.
By the way, that's a luxury for any actor to get off the plane in New York and have a job.
No kidding. Yeah.
I mean, that in itself is like huge because most people just go and they're like, well, I don't know.
Exactly.
I'm going to go see.
And basically the same thing with Los Angeles. I wound up in a mini-series back when mini-series were a network thing called Fatal Vision, which was a 4-hour mini-series about it was a true crime thing. And I don't know that would even happen today because one of the reasons that I got cast was that they had offered it to a bunch of people, I don't know, known or unknown, but no, they got a lot of rejections and they were getting closer to shooting. And it was really a question of, being, wherever you are on the list, and it just happened to shake. And that was my first experience in Los Angeles. So that was another situation where it was like 8 weeks on this thing where I basically was in basically everything that was shot. And To Live and Die in L.A. came right on the heels of that. And that only happened because Billy Peterson was a real good friend of mine. We were together in Chicago all the time. We were roommates. And he got cast in this thing. And and Billy being the social networker that he is, had, 4 of his friends well, why don't you use this guy? He's good.
So wait 1 second. Can I ask you a question? Because this is really funny because now you're saying a lot of names that I actually know. Do you know Stephen Ike?
Sure. Oh, yeah.
Because he's one of my dearest friends.
Oh, yeah. No,
so I've hung out with, the entire crew.
Steve basically was the executive director of Steppenwolf through the 80s and into the 90s, I think,
of course.
if I got my chronology right. No, it was it was wonderful in Chicago between 1980 and the end, even up until the 90s. Even though I had spent time out here, I was still back and forth, and so were a lot of people. Still returning to the theater, and it was
what a time, right? I mean,
yeah, it was very
Malkovich, Metcalf,
sure,
yeah, Gary Sinise,
yeah. I mean, it was really
Billy
collaborative.
Peterson. It was just a really good group of terrific, talented acters.
Yeah,
doing truly remarkable things.
It reminds me too of Julia Louis-Dreyfus and her comedy background. Where, it's like a similar cadre of adventurers, and she was a Saturday Night Live regular.
Right.
And she had, and the sort of trial by fire that everyone goes through coming out of those places. And it's always interesting to me because I did a soap opera in New York for 3 years. And I feel like that was my angle of entry in a way. And I did a play while I was doing the soap, and I had a band. So for 3 years,
you were busy.
I had to stop drinking because after.
Oh, you didn't have time for that?
I didn't have time. You know what I mean? Because, and I think we all know, that feeling. If someone offers you a job, you say yes. I didn't even hear them ask if I could ride the horse, and then I get upset. I'm like, oh. And
you should never answer that,
That's right.
Well, no, I mean, that's like that's the first thing they told you when you graduated from school. It was like,
of course.
Can you do this? Of course.
Oh,
of course.
Of course.
Oh, I can do it. And then you have like a month to kind of like become okay at it. And
right.
then show up,
I grew up on a ranch. I've been roping cattle since I was 5. No problem. Show me the
Oh,
script.
my God.
What I learned from the soap opera was, and I was working with people like Celeste Holm, who, and Wesley Addy, her husband, they lived on Central Park. They liked this job because they could walk to work. They, and the hours were manageable for them, and they only worked a few days a week. And, but she had her Academy Award in her dressing room, just to remind everybody. And then you had young 20-year-olds like me coming in who didn't know their ass from their elbow and bumping into lights and cameras. And I remember this one guy named Bernie Barrow turned to me and he goes, when you feel confused, you look confused. And he goes, you got to learn to hide that. And I said, it's just, there's so many people in the scenes and I never know whose line it is. I know it's just so hard. And he said, I'm going to tell you something. This is going to get you pretty far down the road in television and film. And I said, what's that? And he goes, watch the boom. Because if the boom is over your head, it's your line.
Oh my God, that is true.
Yeah.
However, imagine if we were always watching the boom, it'd be this kind of scene all the time.
Well, you do get this peripheral sense, and those booms were on like cranes back. You know, the boom guy stood up on a platform and moved the boom through.
Oh my God! I mean, watching the evolution of the equipment. You know, I mean, when I started doing this, there certainly was no video village. There may have been at one point a monitor, which literally was about this big.
You know, it's funny because when we were talking about this, about, you know, these sweet sort of like stories about starting and the beginning of the beginning kind of, which we do a lot. Do you ever go back to a time that you go, oh man, that was such a sweet, sweet time? When you go back about like maybe your time in the theater, is there a particular time, Gary, that you think about like, man, that was a really good time and I didn't know it? You know, it happens to me often that I'm hit with these like moments that I go, man, I had no idea that was such a great moment.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know that I single out one moment, but I just feel, and Chicago for me was, you know, my creative beginning began in that city, which is my hometown anyway.
Sure.
And it was at that time in the, you know, the late 70s, early 80s. I mean, it was so affordable. And there really wasn't, unless you chose to go one way or the other, there was a ceiling on, you know, the business. I mean, it was basically theater, except for the occasional movie that ran through town or whatever. But what I do remember is of a time when you're that age, when you're trying to make something happen for yourself and you're working with others and it's communal. And what I do remember and what I compare it to now is that when you're in that pocket, you know, in your early 20s, early mid 20s, and you're learning and trying to learn how to be good and how to get better and how to work with somebody and throw the ball back and forth. I just remember the amount of close relationships I had. I mean, just the number. You know, it's like you were a tribe. That's one of the nice things about being there is the fact that, you know, and you guys were the, you know, kind of the beginning of it. So it may have felt, you know, differently because you were laying the foundation. But for now, what's going on there, and I'm talking primarily not just us in the cast, but the crew itself it's extraordinary to me. I mean, there's people there that some of them were on JAG, some of them worked on JAG. So you're talking about, you know, being on the same lot for 25 years.
Oh yeah,
Johnny O and Billy Bake. But some of those background people in the squad room have been there since the beginning.
Right.
And
since the
when
beginning.
I walked into the squad room and shook your hand, Gary, I looked around and I was saying hello to all these people that I had walked around with for 13 years.
Right.
I walked around that room with them.
That's crazy.
Yeah. And I hadn't seen them in 8 years, and here they were. Well, we are going to let you drift gently back into your day, Gary. Thank you. And I know that it was a weirdo kind of like, what am I doing? You want me to go do what? But
with these people I've never met. Wait, what?
For you to accept this invitation and come hang out with us and talk about NCIS, but more importantly, exploring your incredible career. I mean, it's so cool to get to spend this time with you and hear the stories, and I hope we get to do it again sometime.
Well, thanks for having me.
Congratulations. Congratulations.
Thank you. And I just, you know, I, you know, as I walked through the halls, you know, with orange walls, I realized that there was a lot of sweat and effort that went into keeping the lights on that are still on in that place. And, you know, that's kind of a tip of the cap to both of you and everybody else that's come before. And so that's why one reason I wanted to be here was, and also to spend some time and meet you guys, because Michael, like I said, met briefly in Cote. It was great to see you and meet you.
Yeah.
And so thanks for having me. I really appreciated being here.
We got to hang out with Gary Cole.
Yeah, he's so sweet.
That was really I had no idea what to expect, but that was really something. I mean, I didn't know that you had that connection through your friend Steven too. So
well, it dawned on me as he starts talking about this and then Billy Peterson, and I was like, wait a minute. Because, the Steppenwolf has been around for a long time, and lots of different actors and different, groups of people have gone through there. And then all of a sudden I was like, wait, but if he knows Peterson, then he has to know Steven. And so that was a fun one.
Because how long?
4 years.
How many more seasons do you think they're going to do the Mothership? It's kind of interesting. God,
you never know. They may go for, another 10. You never know. I don't know.
We were talking the other day that the only one that's left that's a spinoff is NCIS Sydney.
Well, and also when you start going back from the original cast, who's there I think it's Sean Murray, Brian Dietzen, and that's it, right?
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
So, but obviously it runs and it does great. So it's, as long as they keep making it, I think they'll have, they'll have a following.
Okay, it's time for game time. Game time. Remember.
Time.
Now, this one is called Remember. In this NCIS episode, Gibbs wakes up unable to remember anything from the past 15 years. Conversely, can Cote and Michael remember anything from the past 24 podcast episodes?
Oh, God, I can remember a lot. I think this is going to turn into a two-parter.
Okay. All right. We're both going to, okay. What was the name of Rudolph Martin's little dog, don't say it, that he brought on the set of NCIS?
And this is my little dog named Comet.
Comet. Yeah, you got it. Okay, good. You got that one right. When you acted out a silly scene with Eric Olson, which strange accent did he adopt?
Oh, God, that's a good one. Norwegian?
Swedish?
Oh, Gollum. Okay, God, we were so far off.
Get it. It's Gollum. The answer is Gollum. I did not get that.
Okay. Who is Sean Murray's favorite serial killer?
That's so funny that I don't remember, but I'm going to say Ted Bundy. What are you going to say?
I hated this. I hated this game.
You don't like serial killers.
No, it's just that I just.
Who do you think it is, Cody?
I don't know. I don't remember. I think I blocked it out. I blacked out.
Jeffrey Dahmer.
Oh, you're going to have to go with Jeffrey Dahmer.
The answer was Jeffrey Dahmer. Okay, Well, we're not doing well. What was David McCallum's implied early advice to Brian Dietzen? Oh, I do remember this.
Oh, tell me, which one?
Steal the scene.
Oh, steal the scene?
Right? Huh. Is that right? Be a scene stealer. Is that correct? Oh, don't ask for a series regular contract. Oh,
which, by the way, he got, but he got that much later. I mean, he had to put in a lot of time.
And the reason that David McCallum said don't ask for a series regular contract is that the guy before Brian had asked for a series regular contract and they fired him. So
right. So I think he was afraid for a long time. What line did Daniela Rua say when she showcased her gun face?
Freeze federal agents.
Oh, yes, because Eric had
down on
like
the ground, hands up. Down on the ground, hands up.
That's awesome.
Well, once again, we have failed miserably in our game time. Remember, which we've now retitled Forget.
So let's go into fan questions, Cherie. This is coming from Miles, San Jose, California. Pin Pula Squad Assemble, a.k.a. Pula Poops. What? Michael and Cote, what are your favorite seasons of NCIS?
Well, I did say this a little bit earlier. Season 3.
Yeah.
6 and 7.
I have to go through them again and start watching them, which I hope we get to do. But I have a special place in my heart for 3, and then I'll have to revisit all the other ones because I haven't watched them in a long time. I remember 3 being very special for many reasons, and so that makes this season of this podcast very special because we revisited a very special time. Jenna from Albuquerque, New Mexico. Wow,
I've been there.
I'm already halfway into season 4. NCIS is so good. Thanks, Jenna. From rewatching all of season 3, is there anything you two should have been, do you think anything should have been done differently in retrospect? That's a good question. What do you think?
Nope. Wouldn't change a thing. No regrets. Can't live that way. Don't look back.
All right. I'll right in line with you, Daddy. Glenn, Savannah. Out of all the guests
Georgia.
you've had, Georgia. Out of all the guests you've had on the podcast, which 3 would you have on your team in a zombie apocalypse? Oh my God.
Good question. Okay. I'm gonna say you're gonna want Eric Christian Olsen.
He's fun.
He's fun, but he can also like start fire with his hands, and he looks like somebody who knows about camping.
Oh yeah, no, that's true.
He's young and strong.
He's young and strong. That's good.
Because there's going to be no satellites in the zombie apocalypse. So you're not going to need a probie. I love you, Sean Murray, but we're going to know the computers are going to be down.
No computer. You're actually going to need
fight the zombies with axes and bow and arrow and whatever we can.
Maybe good because he's in terrific physical shape. Brian Dietzen. He's a runner. That guy. He's he's outdoors a lot of the time. He's from Colorado.
Yes, and he's thin, so he won't eat as much.
You won't eat your rations.
And then
what are you like? What are you?
I mean,
oh my God.
I hate to say it. I mean, do we want to look good? Should we have Rachel Good on the zombie
Rachel
apocalypse?
Good in the hood. One last time in this season, it's time for Gibbs Rule of the Day. It'll be a while until the next one, so let's hope this one's good. Gibbs Rule of the Day, rule number 8, Cherie.
And number 8 is my lucky number.
Yes, it is, because you were born July 8th.
1968.
There you go.
Rule number 8, never take anything for granted.
Have you ever, before you go there, have you ever taken anything for granted?
Good question. And I'm sure I have. Can I tell you something I'm not taking for granted? This podcast. This is the end of our time in this season. Of if we come back and do another round, would you come back and do more of these?
Yes, I think so. I think it's been so much fun. It's just kind of reminiscing about life with you. Remember, the idea first came about because you and I started having these really kind of very long conversations during the pandemic. And
to me, that's just a short chat. 2-3 hours. I'm just getting started.
But I mean, 2-3 hours. It's like, and then at one point I remember thinking like, wow, if we could just kind of like take just an hour of these and just put them out there. Some of them were quite interesting. And of course, we've had to use the structure of the show, which we're both fans of and we both love. And it's the reason why we know each other. So it's actually a great idea to give the show that structure, and then we can sort of riff on that, But the idea, it's funny because now I look forward to the Gibbs Rule because the Gibbs Rule sends it like opens the door to some philosophical thing. It always does, because it opens the door into the, hey, Michael, what have you taken for granted? And then we go into these very personal things, which is the thing that I really love.
And I can say, looking back over these 25 episodes, that I do not have a favorite one because I see it as a whole, like as a piece. And each conversation, each investigation of an episode, I talk about gratitude, like just the fact that I got employed as an actor is a marvel to begin with. But to work with all of these people in the season 3 canon, but also all the wonderful people like Mark Horowitz and Dennis Smith and the people behind the scenes that Rachel Good, people that maybe the people at home don't get to really investigate, or somebody like Gary Cole, who neither of us ever worked with, but there he is carrying the NCIS banner proudly, strongly, beautifully, and moving forward into the future. And it's talk about gratitude, so Gibbs rule number 8 is a great one to have for this.
Never take anything for granted. Rule number 8. And by the way, 8 is a special number for me too. I love that number. And from here, where do we go?
We go off into the sweet, beautiful future, into whatever podcast void we go into. But
but also we're about to experience Budapest.
We're going
and Europe, and we're going to go do a little bit more of these characters, and that's going to be super fun.
We're going to bring to the people the adventures of Tony and Ziva. And if you want to watch it, you can go to Paramount Plus. But if you want to watch episodes of NCIS, NCIS LA, NCIS New Orleans, NCIS Hawaii, or NCIS Sydney, you can go to Paramount Plus, or you can watch new episodes of NCIS on CBS.
You're so good. Thank you for being here.
I love you, Cody DePablo.
Shut up. I love you too.
Remember when you were dating somebody and you wouldn't hang up the phone? And it was like, no, you hang up. No, you hang up.
Oh,
no,
that's so nice.
That's kind of how I feel right now. No, you hang up. No, you hang up.
Oh, no, you hang up.
No, you hang up.
Okay.
Okay.
I have to do it against my will. No.
Okay.
No, don't do it.
All right. Well, we'll send it back to the audience. I'm Michael Weatherly.
And I'm Cody DePablo.
This has been Off Duty, an NCIS Rewatch.
Foo.